Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany, and we are talking about asteroids in astrology today. I'm really excited to go through this topic with you. We're going to stay focused on the first four asteroids, and I'm actually going to go through the houses with examples of them. So this is going to be a really comprehensive workshop that you can refer to. If you have your chart handy, looking at Juno, Ceres, Pallas, Athena, and the fourth one, which I'll get to it as soon as possible. Those are going to be the ones that we are looking at. So if you are looking at your chart and asteroids aren't popping up, you can go back into your astrology software and make sure that you have clicked through that you want to see the asteroids in your chart, that you want to add them in somehow. And so just know that that is available to you. So a couple more people are joining us this morning. Welcome. Um, okay, so asteroids in astrology. Uh, just for those joining, I'm on a friend's computer and I'm a little clunky with it. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about the history of asteroids. We're going to talk mainly about the first four, and then I'm going to show you how you can work with them in your chart. I have a couple of notes off to the side that's kind of a cool example that makes it real for you. So in terms of the history, Demetra George, in the membership, right? In the membership, we're reading Demetra's book, which is about the asteroid goddesses. And so this is kind of, it's been redone a couple of times, but this is the main book that you want to get if you're studying asteroids or if you want to have a reference place to it. Everything I teach from is Demetra's material. And, I want to acknowledge that the first asteroid ephemeris actually wasn't even made until the 70s, right? And the 70s are kind of interesting because that's when women first had access to credit cards. Isn't that wild? Not so long ago. But during this kind of spiritual evolution and financial revolution, with the divine feminine, with women in the 70s and 80s, also came the study of asteroids and astrology. So, yes, wild. And so Eleanor Bach is who made the first asteroid ephemeris. This is before computers. This is before astrology software, right? This is amazing that this could be accomplished. And so Eleanor and Demetra met haphazardly at an astrology conference in San Francisco in 73. And when Eleanor realized that, she had the name Demetra, they knew that they had this kindred spirit thing going on. So Demetra is the equivalent of the Roman goddess Ceres. Ceres is opposite Demetra's sun. And so it just felt very kismet for these two to meet and start studying the same material. Demetra was originally named Margarita after her maternal grandmother, but during her baptism, her godmother insisted that she be named after her paternal grandmother, Demetra. And the asteroid Demeter is in her chart conjunct her 12th house, Saturn, okay, which is the paternal significator. If you're looking for granddad info in your chart, you're looking at Saturn. And so on the paternal side, how interesting is that? The paternal side, and she's named after her paternal grandmother. It switched during her baptism. And she was the kind of woman who was, at the time, living off the grid, living in commune. And you can see some of this, more information about her name in her chart. And that's something I really want to drive home today with a fun example. Um, Let's see. So the asteroid goddesses are the vehicles of rapidly vibrating, birthing energy. So the asteroid goddesses are all about creation. And it's a different flavor, right? But it's all about this rapidly vibrating, birthing energy, worth studying during these changing times. And I think it's important that, we talk about Demetra teaches, but before the use of asteroids, the only way we were looking at the feminine or female aspects was through the moon and through Venus. We had was information about the moon and the Venus. And now we have a wealth of different flavors of feminine energy that is in all of our charts, no matter gender, no matter preference, any of that. We all, as humans, have a feminine aspect to us. And now we can study it thanks to these women. who provided the initial set of information in the 70s, we can go beyond the moon and Venus. I talked about this a little bit, that the 70s and 80s were really the height of this. And there were huge audiences that were really interested in the goddesses and their charts and how this was going to play out in, the tribe of humanity. They were discovered in the asteroids were initially discovered in the late 1800s, and they continue to correspond with various different women's movements. So I don't remember which one I forgot, but there's the first four: Ceres, Juno, Vesta, and Pallas Athena. Um, so far, this is when the first four were discovered, 100 in 1868. Now there's over 1,000 we can see in 1921 as technology advances. And then by 2015, we have over 700,000. So do you guys want to study all 700,000? It's a wealth of information. We're going to stay focused today on the first four. This is where I have to look over at my notes because I'm not on my home computer. But this is a really fun consideration. So Charles marriage to Diana was really, in the media, was very excruciating because of this relationship with Camilla. And I think it was Diana who said that there was always three people in the marriage, three people in the relation. But in his birth chart, in Prince Charles' birth chart, the asteroid Charlie is at 21 degrees of Pisces in his ninth house, which is about meaning and belief and philosophy, right? And so the Sabian symbol for this degree of 21 Pisces is a prophet carrying tablets of the new law walking down the slopes of Mount Sinai. So this has been interpreted as the need to bring down to the level of everyday existence the clear realizations that were made manifest in a great peak experience. So here's Charles, the future king, bringing all of these belief systems down into the earth, down into society, the dreams of the future, making them more realistic. And so he's, the future king, right? Now, that's just one asteroid named Charles in his chart. We also see the asteroid Camilla. There's an asteroid named Camilla that's exactly opposite asteroid Charles or Charlie, which is exactly opposite. So what's exactly opposite 21 Pisces for everybody studying? 21 Virgo, right? The exact opposite. So this chart doesn't show the asteroid goddesses. I couldn't figure one out. So this is just Prince Charles's chart. But it's 21 degrees of Virgo is where the asteroid Camilla is in Charles' chart. So if it's opposite the ninth house, it's going to be in the third house, right? So it's in his third house at 21 degrees of Virgo. And this kind of talks to the on and off again nature of their relationship and the media side of their relationship in the early 70s and their marriage in 2005, tightly squaring this Camilla opposition is Mars and Sag in the fifth house of romance, right? So it's a very challenging position, very challenging to be in this relationship. And so Mars is also apparent in Camilla's birth chart, where the asteroid Charlie is opposite her Mars. So the asteroid Charles is opposite her natal Mars. Lots of interesting conflicts and tensions and stuff just by looking at the names of the asteroid. I could go into the Sabian symbols for that. There's a third member of this whole relationship triad, and it's Diana. And the asteroid Diana is at 5 Sagittarius, which is in Charles' fourth house of home and family. So it was all fated, it was all fated. And, Diana's need for her own personal meaning and her own journey, in that Sagittarius, that sign of the quest for truth, right? That's very present there. And within a very rigid royal family house structure, right? The fourth house, the home and family. So, yeah, I could go on about Diana, or I could go on about their wedding chart. Anyways, I just thought this was such a fun one because it has all three of their names in all of their charts in a way that is very public and interesting. Okay, let's talk about the first four. We're going to cover a lot today. So the daughter is Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. Which is kind of funny. So I was going to name my daughter's name is Callie, and I was going to name her Athena, and that was vetoed. We didn't have agreement, but we weren't fighting about it. We just didn't quite have her name. If you guys don't know this story, or if you've heard this story, forgive me, but we didn't name my daughter until she was 3 months old. And that is a long time in the Western culture, right? We had a home birth, and I was waiting for my sign. So we waited and we waited, and we had all these lists of names, and I thought, Callie, and her dad was like, yeah, that's it, that's the one. And I'm like, wait, we got to wait for our sign. And he's like, okay. So we set a date. We went on a date, and to a place I'd never been. And next door to the place I'd never been was the Texacali Grill. And so the Texa was out, and the neon flashing sign in the sky was Callie, 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 Callie. Later, I go on to my yoga studies, right? Here's my yoga beads, my malas, and I'm going through these deep yoga studies. And Kali is the goddess of war, right? And one of the names that I strongly picked out was Athena, the goddess of war. What the heck? I didn't put that together until I made the slides for this class. So there's something about the names, the names that you pick out for your children, for yourself, the names that you've inherited. There's rich and deep meaning there. And the fact that this asteroid is daughter. So maybe that little personal story will help you remember that. Wife would be Juno, the goddess of marriage. Ceres, the mother, the goddess of agriculture. And Hesta is the home fires, keeping the home fires burning. She's sister. So I want to start with Ceres first. Again, you can click on the asteroids in your astrology software so that you can see them. They won't just be up there normally. You have to go in and select them to turn on. So Ceres is the Great Mother. It was the first asteroid that was discovered and the largest asteroid. Again, Ceres, you think about the goddess of agriculture. One of her signs is the poppy. It's about feeding people. It's kind of scorpionic with that birth, death, rebirth. And there's some tragedy going on there. It's very plutonic there. There's her youngest daughter, youngest, I don't know. When Persephone was little, she was abducted, right, by her own brother, and it created much strife in the mythology, and it's just kind of this awful story, right? And so Ceres has had to go through some pain with the home and family. Some pain involves being the great mother. And the qualities, if you're looking for, okay, what's going on with Ceres in my chart? Well, Ceres shows you where you have a strong desire to be a nurturer. It's not just Cancer, it's not just the moon, it's not just the fourth house or 10th house. It shows you really kind of the founding father or the founding mother of organizations. I believe George Washington has a prominent Ceres that we're going to see. So these founders of organizations or countries, again, some kind of experience of great separation, great loss involving mothering can happen. Mothering also shows us our relationship with food, what we need the nutrients we need. I woke up yesterday and I was like, I just need nutrients. Like I was a crazy person yesterday. But, but our relationship with food, our relationship with the nutrients that we take in, and the best way that I can tell you guys to study that is through your human design chart, of course, looking for your digestion style and experimenting with that, maybe experimenting with your blood type diet, experimenting until you feel like you're getting the nutrients you need, and not in a societal planned marketed mass media way, right? It's a personal experience. So series that are very complicated and very challenged will also be shown as eating disorders. And so it can be our body's response to violation when we're having an attack, when we're having episodes, when we're having the dread, as I call it in my household, and we stop receiving nourishment. We can't get fully nourished. And so you can also see attachment relationship styles where you have a conflicted series. So attachment and avoidant relationship. And so I have a dog that's a great example of this. Like he runs up to me and like gives me a kiss and then runs away. Like, let me love you, but don't love me. Let me get close, but not too close. I got to get far away. It's that whole like, I want like love me, but not now, not right now. but where are you? Where did you go? Come back. And the second they come back, it's like too close, too close, too close, too close. It's that need for co-regulation of the sympathetic nervous system that we can see having an effect here in Ceres. This doesn't mean that everybody has a whacked out Ceres. It means if it's challenged, or if you're going through a challenging transit to your Ceres, that this too shall pass. And these are some of the lessons that were intended, not just for you to overcome, but for all women, you know, for all aspects of the feminine in every individual to walk through. Okay, little things in the way. This is Clara Barton. She was the founder of the Red Cross and many other things. And so, you know, that we were talking about Ceres representing the founding fathers, the founding mothers. Here she is with the Red Cross. So she can be somebody that you can remember in this way. And she says, I may sometimes be willing to teach for nothing, but if paid at all, I'm not going to do it for less than a man gets, right? Now, I know that there's opinions and data is skewed, but here she is back in the day saying with her Ceres in the 10th house of career, right? And I'm not on a high horse. I don't have an opinion about this. It's just how the astrology is playing out, right? Very interesting. She's like, I'm going to be the founding mother of this health thing going on. I'm going to be the protector, the nurturer, and it's part of my job role. It's part of my mission. It's part of what the world needs for me. And I'm going to do it for a level that it's worth, right? So this is the part where it gets complex. Everybody live that's watching today has a good understanding of at least the houses. And so you're going to be able to use this. If this part is a little too advanced or over your head, just skip the through the houses part. But I wanted to give you guys some good juicy stuff to be able to go back to your charts and your loved ones' charts and play with this. So if you have Ceres in the first house, wherever Ceres is, right, nurture is the main theme. We want to nurture that part of ourselves and others. So the first house is that your main role is the parent, the provider, the founding father, the founding mother of your household, of your culture, of your lineage, of your nation. And George Washington is our best example. If you've got Ceres in the second house, it's that material security, right? That material side of things. Patty Hearst comes up a lot, and I have to be honest, you guys are going to have to tell me this story because I went to look it up and I'm like, that's wild, that's crazy. I didn't live through that media, so it's not as viscerally familiar to me, but I wanted to put it up there because she is the main example in a lot of the asteroid books. So let that be an example for you of Ceres in the second house. Wanting to be provided for, right? Needing to be provided for. Willing to go to any lengths, right? To be provided for or to provide. Then the third house. So we think about Mercury, we think about communication, we think about information exchange when we're talking third house. Margaret Mead, who did a lot of writing and teaching on family structure, nurturing, how to nurture people, how to connect with people, and information exchange around this topic, had Ceres in the third house. The fourth house, this is, okay, so Prince Albert, right? Prince Albert with Ceres in his fourth house did a really good job of providing Queen Victoria, right? They say providing her with 9 children and also the emotional support she needed to rule the empire. Ceres in the fourth house, the idealized mother, the idealized opportunity to be fully supported, to do all of the most. It's like a touch screen and I'm not used to how. So all right, so now we've got the fifth house. Fifth house, the house of creativity, of romance, of playfulness. With Ceres here, you can see a larger involvement with children, for good or bad, right? For good or bad, because how is it aspected, right? What are the life lessons of that soul, right? And so this could be a significant loss around children. It can be like, for the example here is Percy Shelley, who was denied his children through a custody loss. That doesn't mean that they're all going to be bad examples. It just gives you the flavor, just gives you the tone. If you have a very positively aspected Ceres there in the fifth house, maybe you have many children. Maybe, you know, like there's many ways that this can play out. And Nadine's is in 26 Sag in the seventh house. 1 degree. So when it's just 1 degree over and it's also in the very end of Sag, you might have many interpretations here because, like Nadine, this is a good example to talk about for everybody because when it's just right over the edge, it could be that you have more sixth house flavors to it or you recognize it. It could be that it has more, what's after Sag, Capricorn flavors to it, right? And she's pointing out that 26 is the galactic center. So maybe you're an excellent study for us here. This is very interesting. So the sixth house has to do with service, preventive health, your day-to-day routine, the things that you do in and out every day are your preventive health strategies. So we see Saint Bernadette of Lourdes as the Holy Mother, you know, the one who is in service to all of us. The sixth house, of course, has Virgo tones to it, health, service, the Virgin, the holy, sacred spaces that we walk through in this life, where we need to be nurtured. The seventh house is they need to be nurtured by somebody else, that significant partner. And so Jane Fonda has been given as an example by Demetra as somebody whose dad, and she has a significant relationship with her dad and a significant relationship with her husband, who was a lot like her dad or is a lot like her dad. And it's that passing down, you know, how we say like, oh, you end up marrying your dad or you end up marrying your mom or you end up becoming your mom. Like you can see this more prominently, more strongly with Ceres in the seventh house. Very interesting concept to work with, to play with. And then in the eighth house, we've got Ceres nurturing us through our sexuality, right? The eighth house, our deepest human bonds, that visceral need to connect with somebody and like way beyond in the cosmos, not just physically. The eighth house is very scorpionic in nature, right? It rules sex, death, rebirth, and dying. So we can see the example of Sigmund Freud, somebody who went deep into the world of psychology. I almost said astrology. Wouldn't that be cool if you did? All right. Can I click? So here we go. In the ninth house, we've got nurturing through ninth house things, Sagittarius things, the pursuit of truth and freedom and foreign language and travel and philosophy and the guru and the Hierophant card. An example is Anne Lindbergh, who was like, heck yeah, I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to see, I'm going to explore. I'm going to be a mom of 6. I'm going to write. The ninth house rules publishing. You know, you can see that there. How she needs to be nurtured by seeing the world, getting out there, doing it all, living to the most high potential of her life. The 10th house, you have a nurturing profession. So we saw the example of Clara Barton, being the mom of the American Red Cross, serving in many wars, working with healthcare, working with you know, people's health, really. I mean, people's life, that's her destiny, right? Her destiny is to nurture people. That's her profession. That's her destiny promise. And then we've got the 11th house, which is nurturing through all of our friend groups, the collective consciousness, the people that we hang out with. So attorney Gloria Allred was one of those who was protecting women's rights, the collective group of women. You can see that coming out for her professionally. The 12th house, right, where we have the hidden, the things that we don't always know, the subconscious. We see Ceres in the 12th house. There's some rejection, there's some loss, there's usually a denial of some kind of love. I think about, you know, here's Maria Montessori, who was like, yeah, we're going to take care of these kids, the disadvantaged children. We're going to provide an education system that is natural. You can see some of the karmic responsibilities coming forward in her life. I also think about Natalia Grace. I don't know if you guys are watching any of those series right now, but somebody who was rejected, told she wasn't the right age, denied love. You know, I don't know what side of the fence you stand on that. I don't know what side of the fence I stand on because I've seen both of the different documentaries and it's like very challenging to know the truth. But regardless of the truth, this is an example of somebody in society who was rejected, disadvantaged, denied, And whether she's a con artist or not, it still has that tone to it that you could apply here as we're learning through it. So this is great. iPhone, I don't know which one you are because your thing says iPhone, but thank you for sharing that your Ceres is in the 10th house. So I'm curious what you do, and your 10th house is in Gemini. So I'm very curious what you do for a living or for the things that you are known for in the world. Let us know if you feel like sharing. And then Nadine, okay, your chart isn't, let's see, I'll have to click through that. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. I want to look at it. Okay, so this is the second one we want to talk about. Pallas Athena, the goddess of war, the warrior queen. This was the second asteroid that was discovered. One of her symbols is the owl, right? And so you guys know that I've used the owl glyph many times through my different businesses. It's a symbol of wisdom. It's a symbol of, well, wisdom. So I thought this was interesting. So Pallas Athena is also a patron of the artisans, the people the craftsmen, the farmers market people, the people that make little things and soaps and gifts and all of that type of a thing. So I love doing stuff like that, right? Every holiday, make a big batch of all the little things and farm it out to everybody. Um, so it is said that Zeus's favorite children, she's one of Zeus's favorite children. And so there's also this notion going on that Pallas Athena has some association with gender fluidity because she was born out of the top of his head. She was born out of nothingness, right? And so there's a lot of association with gender fluidity when you're looking at charts and Pallas Athena. And so she was strong, capable, wise, very masculine, very strategic in battle. And she's always going around humiliating Mars, which we don't want to be in the business of humiliating the divine masculine. But there's this edge to Pallas Athena that's not really the same edge in the other asteroid goddesses. So we'll see that in the chart. We'll see that play out. Have you overfunctioned in the masculine? Is there a cost that's being paid? Like your career, it's only your career and nothing but your career, and your career is so important that it costs you some of your relationships as a female. You can see it where you're a woman in a man's world. You can see it where you are the CEO of something. A woman is a CEO of something that is traditionally very masculine. You'll see Pallas Athena very present. You'll see daddy issues. Okay, you'll see people that are seeking masculine approval. You'll see information about the autoimmune system. You'll see the ability to resist attack, right? In medical astrology, there's a lot of healing powers and properties associated with this particular warrior goddess, and she's always defending justice here. Oh, iPhone is Sharon Todd. Okay. Yeah, she's saying that her computer wouldn't connect. I know, it's a weird day. It is 2 degrees here. So I get it. It's tech problems are occurring. So she is saying she works as an inventory planning support for 26 branches in the electrical distribution industry, right? There's a woman in a typically masculine field, right? Very interesting, Sharon. And I missed one. Nadine, yeah, you did watch an episode. Well, there's a couple different ones. There's one that paints her very poorly and one that paints her very positively, and they all twist around. So I think that more will be revealed about that case over time. Okay. So Nadine loves Shirley MacLaine. Awesome. And so she has a prominent Pallas Athena in her 7th house. And so she's saying people, we just don't know what to do with women, right? That's what she's saying about it. We just don't know what to do with women, people in this culture. Isn't she pretty? So wherever you have Pallas Athena in your chart, think of it kind of Aries-like. Think of it as an area where you're pioneering, you're piercing through, you're doing something different, you're kind of outside of the norm in some ways. It's not good or bad. It can be exacerbated when the pendulum is on one side of the thing. So always the middle road is what I like to go with. So Pallas Athena in the 1st house. This is really where you see more androgyny. This is where you see that woman in a man's world type of a thing, you see pilot Amelia Earhart flying with all the guys, right? So she has a very prominent Pallas Athena in her first house. In the second house, material, money. This is where we see Jack Kerouac saying, you know, middle class values are something to be questioned, something to be curious about. How are you really going to get your resources? And what are you really fighting for? And what does it really matter anyways, right? With the third house, with Pallas Athena, this is the house of communication, our central processing unit, and where we might be a little bit more, have our spidey senses, where we have our psychic nature, where we have our intuitive abilities. Richard Alpert, right, is exploring consciousness through LSD, through psychedelics, and through, you know, otherworldly type of communication. And he's got a strong Pallas Athena in his third house, right? He's pioneering in the realm of consciousness. Very interesting. Richard Alpert. All right, so I could go on about that for a while. The fourth house is also, we see, as Demetra teaches over her years and years and years of studying charts, more psychic talents here in the fourth house, traditionally ruled by Cancer, the moon, the intuitive. And so it makes sense here. Julia Child has a strong Pallas Athena in the fourth house of home and family, of the cook, of being the pioneer in cooking, of kind of knowing what the people need, right? Kind of interesting to think about it that way. These aren't perfect examples. These are the ones Demetra teaches with, and I'm sure you can come up with some things too. The fifth house, where we have romance and kids and creativity and fertility, we've got Helen. Oh, sorry, I just hit something wrong. Am I still muted? Thaler, how do you say her name, guys? Who, according to Demetra, was an abstract painter. And so having this like pioneering asteroid activating the fifth house of creativity, of course, you're going to need some type of self-expression and creative outlet. If I could improve my slides, it would be to add pictures of all of these people, but I really wanted to give you a good chunk of information to go exploring with. So in the sixth house, Pallas Athena, this is about, again, the health, the preventive health, the day-to-day routine, sometimes our vocation. This is where we see Virgo tendencies, the healers. And so we see Edgar Cayce, the prophet healer, here with a strong Pallas Athena in his sixth house. Very cool. In the seventh house, we see people that are trying to mediate or be counselors in relationship, trying to balance things out. Shirley MacLaine, women's rights, is a good example of this here. And then the eighth house, like we think of that sex, death, rebirth, deepest human bonds, Kundalini yoga. We think about creative coming together, joint ventures. We think about sexual and spiritual transformation. And Parahamsa Yogananda has Pallas Athena in the eighth. Kind of cool. Let me check the chat before I move slides. Kendra has Athena in her seventh house too, and her person of interest, that's cool, has it in their seventh house. Oops. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. It says Zoom quit unexpectedly, but I'm gonna roll on. Okay. So Nadine's got Pallas Athena in her sixth house, close to her sun. And Kendra's got her seventh house ruled by Pisces. So strong intuitive mixed with person with Pallas Athena. Yeah, I suppose. Yes. So let's see. Yeah, sometimes you're intuitive for the other person. Some of us are here to know the other, and some of us are here to know ourselves. And that can be confusing and conflicting in our society that doesn't really teach that, right? It's all about self-development. Not necessarily, you know, some of us are here to guide others towards self-development. So this can give you some nuanced information to explore in your charts. Okay. So continuing Pallas Athena through the houses, the ninth house, right? That pursuit of education and university level work and growth and overseas travel. I asked you to unmute, Kendra, but I meant to unmute myself. Thanks for rolling with me. just trying to get through the class with the wacky weather here. I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you for your grace. So we were talking about Pallas Athena. I'm going to redo the ninth house, right? The ninth house of overseas travel and higher education and publishing and law and justice and finding the truth, right? And so we see some level of activism with Pallas Athena, the warrior goddess in the ninth house. So Jefferson Davis is one of the examples here. In the 10th house, right, our profession, what the world needs from us, we see the example of Helen Gurley Brown. She was the editor-in-chief of Cosmo. She's like, yeah, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about women's needs. Let's talk about pleasure. Let's talk about the things that we're not talking about. Let's make it public, right? And that is what the 10th house, that's what the world needed from her to express at some level. So a very interesting example. I like that example because it's clear to me. The 11th house example, new social visions. So again, think of the 11th house as networking groups, future dreams, hopes, and goals, and where we are in our groups, right? Like our place within a group. It's the house of the audience in many ways. Bob Dylan had Pallas Athena in his 11th house. And so he's like, yeah, he's talking about social reform through song to the masses. He's talking about change, right? And and it's being a singer-songwriter, you could say, has some more feminine qualities to it. It being in the folk world, being prominent in that time, and just saying, yeah, like what things have got to change for all of us. So we've got to have freedom, right? The 11th house naturally ruled by Aquarius. So like a rolling stone, if you will. We've got to be moving on, moving forward. And then there's the 12th house, right? The house of redemption is how I like to think about it. I texted a friend of mine like, oh yeah, that's in your 12th house of prisons. And I didn't go on to explain myself. And they were like, that sounds awful. I'm like, well, prisons are all about breaking free and redemption. And it's all about bringing the subconscious conscious and bringing that which used to hold you back forward into freedom. It's the only thing that really can. And so anyways, this 12th house is also associated with where we can have some mental breakdowns, where we can have some mental breakthroughs. And so Angela Davis, who was somebody who was put in prison for her political affiliation, for her beliefs, for what she wanted to pioneer, is a small example of Pallas Athena, how that could play out in the 12th house. Okay, we're on Vesta. Are you guys doing okay? Okay, great. So we're on Vesta. So Vesta is the eternal flame. This is where we keep the home fires burning, the goddess of the hearth. You light your candles on your altar to Vesta, keep the home fires burning. In Rome, she was the deity associated with the virgins. The virgins specifically who tended the sacred fires. And so Vesta in your chart, you can see celibacy because of the virgin aspect. You can see where we are workaholics. We can see where we are our own self. We're not defined by anything else. There can be seasons of Vesta, right? There can be seasons of Vesta. It's representing just that autonomy over your own body. It represents with the virgins sexual repression and also liberation. So always with astrology, opposite and complementary medicine. And we can see, okay, I have a note here that Margaret Sanger, who opened the first birth control clinic, is an example of a prominent Vesta. We can see a prominent Vesta in the Me Too movement if we want to study that. There can be scholastic interests and shared beliefs involved with Vesta, but overall, if you think about Vesta, you want to think about the eternal flame. You want to think about commitment, excuse me. And here, I have this book because my mom had it, and I actually really like it. It's Saint Teresa of Avila, and her life motto was "Let me suffer or let me die." Okay, and there's so many interesting things that you can see through looking at Vesta in the first house. She's like fully committed to the church, to the philosophy, to the virgin kind of archetype, the idea of suffering versus death. This is very chironic in many ways, you can see too. So I still recommend the book for those that have that area as an interest. But this commitment that we're making is the one inside of ourselves, that autonomy, that thing that's just us for a moment. Seasons of Vesta. So the first house, of course, would be St. Teresa. We just talked about that. The second house with resources and finances and money, Catherine the Great. And what did she do? She got new spaces, she got new material, she got new territory for Russia. She replenished the economy, money, right? So is having these examples of the people helpful? I think it's kind of a helpful way to learn. But if you don't know these people and it's confusing you, I would encourage you to journal and go back and make your own notes about who do I know that has Vesta in the second, or what would that look like, or what is an example of a vibe that feels like that inner commitment to supporting somebody with resources, or a country with resources, or myself or my family with resources. This commitment to it, right? That's very, very deep. The third house, right? The dedication to your mind. So did you guys read Siddhartha? That was one that we were required reading in our household for a couple of generations, and a couple of extended families too. So Hermann Hesse is who wrote that. And that is a journey of your mind, studying your mind, studying your spirituality. The fourth house has to do, of course, with home and family, roots and refuge. Actress Eleonora Duse, is it Duse? Duse? I didn't know this one. This was a Demetra example. But here she is, born into a theatrical family, and she's doing whatever the family is doing. She's committed to doing it with the family. They were touring artists and in the theater. Okay, let me check my chat before I go on and Google who some of these people are. Yeah. Sharon has Vesta within 5 degrees of Ceres in the 10th house, both in Gemini. So Sharon, I don't want to overshare. We had a conversation the other day where we were really looking at Sharon's 10th house in Gemini, and she was sharing some that it's like, yeah, people tell me I should write all the time. Well, we weren't even looking at asteroids, and here you go. Here you go. They're right there for you. There is something there to explore, right? Both Vesta and Ceres, right? Like, I think that's very powerful information for you to continue to. Gemini isn't only about writing, but your friends or your psychics or whoever has told you this before are picking up on that because there's something there for you to understand and explore. So if writing is like not it, or it's not the season of it, that's okay. I've had seasons of writing. I mean, I've written 20 books, y'all. I wrote and wrote and wrote. I started a publishing company. I wrote and wrote and wrote and helped other people write and write and write, right? But only last month do I feel like I got a divinely inspired idea to do astrology completely differently than I've ever seen it done. It has to do with the 4 directions, has to do with sacred space, and it's because I'm in a season of it. So you may not have hit your season of it yet, but there's something there. And if it's not writing, right, if you think about Gemini, that has to do with duality. It has to do with the hands and the wrists. It could be hobbies that you do. You could be like knitting for all I care. You know what I mean? You might be like the world's coolest knitter, crocheter, something that's doing this over and over and over. There's lots of things to explore. So if writing isn't hitting, don't let that hang you up, and don't be like, God, I'm missing out on my opportunity to write. Explore the other themes of Gemini, because you have a very potent 10th house that we are continuing to explore under many different layers. It's really cool. Are you okay with me sharing that? Yeah, okay. Because I can cut it out of the replay if you don't want that out there. I like it that we have personal examples. It makes it real for not only us, but our colleagues and friends that are studying with us this year. So in the 5th house, romance, creativity. Thank you. Actually, let's go back. Nadine has helped with some notes here. Books by Hess, who is the 3rd house example, that he got the Nobel Prize in literacy, I guess, in 1946 for Siddhartha. Demian, The Glass Bead Game, and Steppenwolf, right? So it's more than just Siddhartha. There's You know, basically, you've got to be Herman Hesse, Sharon. I don't know. Right at that level. No, I know you're a 10th house, but there's that Gemini third house flavor to it going on. Kendra has her Vesta in the 10th house of Taurus. Ooh, okay, cool. So we're getting there. So the 5th house, romance, pleasure, children, creativity, birthing something, fertility. It's the Empress card. I say these because I think this is how we learn astrology is through repetition over and over. What is the 5th house? All of those things, Empress style stuff. Billie Jean King, tennis player. She sacrificed her own, you know, everything was at sacrifice to the career, right? Everything was as at sacrifice to the career. So let me move this down so I can see what my note was. Yeah, focused on her sport at all costs. Vesta, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be the best woman tennis player there is, right? And that's my creative self-expression. So your creative self-expression can come in the kitchen, it can come in with the way you dress, it can come with the way you do your hair, it can come with the poems that you write, it can come with the music that you choose to listen to. It doesn't have to be public. But that 5th house of creative self-expression for her came out through sports. Okay, let me check my chat. Yes. You have a strength in music, right? That creative side of you that wants to come through, that inner commitment to my own music. Whether she says music is my jam. Whether you publish it or not, whether other people hear it or not, whether you are the next Madonna or not, it's important for you to just do it, right? To just get it out and let it flow, and it changes the vibration and the frequency in your home and your heart and the people around you and the neighborhood, and it has this effect that you're destined to do, right? At all costs. Like, sorry, guys, I got to do it. And if that means I'm not home for dinner, I'm sorry. If that means, I mean, it's not even, I'm sorry. It's like, that means I am committed to this, right? Okay. Amazing. And, oops. 100%, she says, yep. So the 6th house, there's also this dedication to work, healing, preventive health, day-to-day routine. Elizabeth Taylor here with the 6th house is historically, right, ruled by Virgo. So we see her drive for perfection. This is one way that you could see that commitment to being dressed up, lipstick on, everything together all the time. I think about like my grandmother's generation, and they were always like dressed to the nines, earrings, lipstick, shoes on, like shoes on in the house when the man came home, when the family came home. I mean, I like barely get it together from here up for a Zoom meeting. Like, just it's different times, I know, but I think about like, wow, what a big, huge difference. My mom even was that way. My mom would even like get ready, perfume, hair done, everything put together, house clean, table done. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful expression. I just express things differently than that. So, all right. So there's this post where we're working on one's relationship. You can see the First Lady, Miss Nixon, who is a devoted and loyal wife to President Nixon. You can see that commitment there, that commitment to being the First Lady in a total supportive role. The 8th house, that intensity, right? That one that we have shared resources, where we have that deep Freudian, it's Scorpio, right? It's that questioning, that going beyond the surface. We can see Van Gogh, who has an artistic intensity, who cut his ear off, right? Who has this inner commitment, right? To what I need to do, this psychic side that has to come out. There's something that is inside of me that's kind of twisted up that I need to get out, so that it's not all hanging out in here all of the time. Okay. Vesta in the 9th house, right? A commitment to seeking the truth, but keeping the home fires burning, but in terms of 9th house issues, spirituality, gurus, studying the sacred texts, studying the holy texts, studying what's fair and honest and true, right? Sagittarius, ninth house stuff. So William Blake, somebody who wrote a lot of different religious offerings, right? Interesting. In the 10th house, I think that was you, Kendra, and you, Sharon. This dedication to career or placement in society. It's not like you guys are born with like, well, I want to conquer my career this lifetime. Like that's what I was intended to do. It's almost, just think about the inverse of that. The world needs something from you in a position of leadership that you're working towards. You're putting stuff in your medicine bag for years and years, and it hits at different times. And your transits are going to show you when it might hit, but it's not even that important because it's going to hit when it hits. I didn't get a spark of inspiration to write a book until I got it, even though I was practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing. So the sense of inner commitment to your career is actually an inner commitment to the tribe of humanity, what the world really needs you to do. So Pope John Paul I is an example of Vesta in the 10th house. Somebody who was deeply committed to improving society through the lens of their own spiritual truth, right? What they thought was best, what they think is best, their visions, their versions, all of those. The 11th house are networks or groups. So Jane Addams, a social worker who set up neighborhood housing for immigrants, who helped with child labor, who helped with public health, who helped with insurance, right? Think about insurance alone, just helping the masses and the groups and this deep commitment. Neighborhoods, 11th house issues, right? Groups of people, very interesting. And then the 12th house, prisons, right? Redemption, our spiritual practices, the things that are behind the scenes that are unexplained. The moon card can be the devil card. For me, I have 4 planets in my 12th house, right? It's a very comfortable place. I like to talk about death. I like to talk about mediumship. I like to talk about the hidden and the unseen and the mysteries and the messages of the bees, who are those magical creatures that are the messengers between worlds, right? That's all very 12th house stuff. Well, you find here Madame Blavatsky, and she was one of the ones who was really prominent in the early spiritualist movements. And so I love teaching spiritualist history, usually around October. There's a great conversation I had on the podcast with one of my teachers and friends, Lisa Williams, about the history of spiritualism. So if that topic interests you, we can go back and find that link. It's free, it's up, it's for everybody. But Madame Blavatsky was a medium. She was a mystic. She believed in the principles of spiritualism, that life goes on. You know, spiritualism is just, it's very much like Christian church with a message from the beyond at the end. There's hymns, there's devotion, there's praise, there's time for healing, there's time for meditation, there's time for a message of hope. And then there's a message from a spirit loved one, right? And so she's doing this in 1875. She founded the Theosophical Society. So I was glad for an example that I could really know and nail and talk about, but she was deeply committed to this spiritualism. All right, so we've got Juno, the goddess of marriage, very popular one to look at in the chart. This is one that people enjoy talking about, I find. And so the goddess of marriage, let's see, let me move my people so I can see my notes. Willingly gave her power over to Jupiter to forge an intimate, profound, and equal and fair union. So she didn't get what she was looking for. She was denied the ability to use her wisdom, use her strength. So there's an element of sacrifice there in marriage too. There's an element of betrayal there. So she's one of the triple moon goddesses, and then in terms of looking at your chart, a strong Juno placement can show you where you're terrified of being left, where you've got a fear of abandonment and betrayal, where you're terrified of sex in some ways, because you feel like there's a manipulation happening, that you're going to trade love for money. I see that over and over and over again. We see it in the 2nd house. We see it in Venus placements. We see it in, what else can I think of? Some Capricorn placements, but what we see is that there's this connection between worth and self-worth and net worth that is skewed, right? And so if you are making your financial decisions from a place of parasympathetic fight or flight, you have a very different financial pathway than somebody who's making decisions from a a very normal, like everything's good in my nervous system place. So this connection between money and love, and trading sex for love, and trading approval for money, and people pleasing, and some things like this can be where you see some Juno aspects going on. You see relationship as part of their self-expression. The tantra, the tantrikas, the earliest yogis who are doing these poses and postures as a sense of devotion. The tantrikas have their body as their vessel to praise God, right? To be thankful for this precious human life. And so they go through these postures, right? Before yoga was yoga, we had the tantrikas, and they go through these different postures to be like, this one's for you. You know, thank you for this experience. Thank you for this deep, rich, beautiful human experience of being inside this incredible body. So there's that. And there's also, oh, I had an example of Reverend Jesse Jackson having his sun conjunct Pluto. Interesting. We can see some of the first waves of the feminism, the rise in feminist history. A lot of those leaders had a prominent Juno. Let me look at, Nadine says fifth house. You got a traffic jam with Juno. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you got a traffic jam in the fifth house. That's cool, because like a traffic jam in the creative house, that's neat. Like, who knows what you're going to come up with? There's a lot of alchemy. There's a lot of medicine woman in your fifth house. Yeah, she's like got that on lock. It's totally embodied here. Elvis, okay. I was trying to come up with some non-women ones, and Elvis was a good one because he's got Juno in the second house of money, material things, right? Sex, opposite the second house, opposite in complementary medicine, is the eighth house, sex, right? Shared resources, right? So what's mine and yours, and how do we blend those things for whatever? And so in terms of the quote I used for him, you could have pulled up any Elvis quote. The one I picked was, when things go wrong, don't go with them, right? And so he has this understanding of money and material gain that come naturally to him there with Juno in the second house. His marriage was very public. There's lots of great movies out about Elvis nowadays. Have you guys seen some of the latest ones? They're so artistic and interesting, right? But I love that quote. Like in my family, we would say, if things aren't going right, go left. But I like this one too. When things go wrong, don't go with them. If you're going through hell, keep going, he says. Right? Okay. So Juno is where we are searching deeply to be connected, where we want to have a meaningful union. In the first house, checking on my time, I'm running a little over. Thanks for your patience. Totally cool if anybody needs to hop off. In the first house, this is an identity. Identity is found in our primary relationship. Like Demetra's example was foreign ambassador Claire Booth Luce. I don't know this example as well, but the idea here is that I am my partner. I am my partnership. I am my marriage. I am the other person, and I have a strong identity with that. The second house would be Elvis, right? He has this lavish home, this lavish material life that he was able to provide and for his partner and for his family in many ways. And so the third house, discussion with a partner leading to something, some aha moment inside of you. And the third house, Sally Struthers, media appearances on behalf of the Christian Children's Fund. So the third house is media too, right? And she's probably learning more about herself than she is even about the message that's going out that she's transmitting. And so this is an inner child work of her, as part of her life, her own inner child, right? And so the fourth house, we're talking about meaningful union. We feel like we have to be properly partnered for life to go well. It's like some people, like, I have to have the bed made for the day to go well. Some people have to be properly partnered for their life to go well. And you see the example of Margaret Trudeau, who I believe left the marriage, right? And she's not able to be part of that strain. Like, it was too heavy. The bed wasn't made. She didn't have a good day. She had to make some changes. So there's an example. The fifth house, relationship as a source of inspiration. James Dean, that very sexy film idol, The fifth house being the arts, creativity, empress, romance, James Dean, smoldery. I looked up a couple of James Dean quotes, but I went with Elvis instead. It was easier to see. In the sixth house, right? Typically, we think about Virgo in the sixth house, so our health and our preventive health. And we've got Indira Gandhi working with her husband for political causes. This is somebody who you can see with a focus on health, a focus on service, a focus on I'm giving my life over to a greater cause that is part of my significant partnership. And I'm just going to stand behind that, right? You can see Juno and like Stand By Your Man type of a song is coming to mind. And then also with the seventh house, this primary emphasis on marriage. So yeah, it's kind of first house is opposite seventh house. It makes sense. We've got Edward Kennedy. He chose family over running for presidency. You know, my marriage is going to come first. It would be interesting to see some of the other royal families and where Juno might be in terms of those who chose family over the royal party. Is Juno is in the 12th house. Talk about attachment issues, she says. Okay. Yeah. But once we make the subconscious conscious, it doesn't rule your life anymore. You don't question it. It's out. You popped the zit. It's healing. You pulled the thorn out. There's a salve over it. Once it's clear, it moves out of your system. And I've seen it 100% of the time, not even 90%. It might happen quickly. It might happen slowly, but it happens. Once you have awareness, it starts healing the situation. The eighth house, emotional intensity, right? So we've got, who is this? Columnist Hedda Hopper expose the private lives of Hollywood stars. So think about Scorpio and expose and Pluto and unearthing something that's deep and dark and taboo and hidden and putting it out there and for the public to see and learn from. You know, not everybody chooses that path. So this meaningful union continues through the houses here with Juno in the ninth house. We're looking for this truth in relationship. You think about Michael George's song, Father Figure is kind of what comes to mind for me. I'll be your father figure. What is put your tiny hand in mine? It's kind of a sicko song, but but that's what I think of when I'm thinking about this. You're looking for this. It's when you see people fall in love with their teachers or students, it's because you're like so attracted to the truth, to education, to understanding, to somebody that inspired you to see more, to grow more. Let's see, she's got a crazy example here too. All right. The 10th house, we've got somebody who marries their career. Judy Garland, of course. I didn't know she made movies for 27 years. Like you just think about Wizard of Oz kind of is where I stop. But 27 years, that's a cycle of Saturn, right? So she was deeply committed for an entire cycle of Saturn. And somebody who married their career. Love it. The 11th house, we need the relationship to extend into friend groups. So you see a lot of activism with 11th house, period. People that have social rapport, I don't know where that came from, but have this intensity around like the group and the tribe. We're not all born for that. You know, some people that have a strong 11th house emphasis don't understand people that are here for an individual path. Not everybody is here to support global warming. Not everybody is here to support the rise of insert topic. There are groups of people that are, and it's not for everyone, right? We have to have that individuation in the charts to advance, you know, we have to have that diversity and that contrast to be able to learn and move forward. But this 11th house, we see a lot of people that have this desire to be activists, right? This desire to make radical change through a lot of people. And then the 12th house, right? The karmic aspect, the loss of a partner, the emotional intensity, the depth around, you know, our sacred unions and that which we don't know about them and that we feel like we're on repeat with these patterns. And why is it like this ancestral lineage chain breaker? It's like this, Juno in the 12th. So Edith Piaf, born of prostitution and experienced a lot of personal tragedies in her relationships. right? That doesn't mean that you're destined to experience personal tragedies in your relationships. It means that you're destined to have awareness around it and to grow from it and to break free of that, to understand and move beyond. Let's see who's talking to me. Sharon says she's loaded in Gemini, 9th and 10th houses. You sure are. Look at you finding the asteroid placements. I'm so proud of you. You guys, you're going to surpass me here before too long. That's beautiful. Yeah, you got a lot of 9th and 10th house activated here. So that's why it's important, we study, like Sharon knows that she's got Sun, Moon, Taurus, and people will talk about that and like you'll be in the Sun, Moon, Taurus box forever. But look at all that Gemini, and also her progressed Sun, what degree is that in 13? So when she was, let's see, roughly, I don't know, let's say 15 to 18, things started changing for her because her progressed Sun was moving from Taurus into Gemini, where all of those Gemini activities are. So working with technologies, electrical wires, communication exchanges, pathways to transmit messages, that's all very Gemini. Some of the stuff going on with work can be associated to that too. So this is brief. We've got one more slide. You hung with me. This is how you work with the asteroids in the chart. This is, this is Demetra's work. This is what's in the book, and this is very helpful information. She says there's 7 PowerPoints in the chart to look for. And so the main thing that you want to look for with asteroids, they're not as potent and clear as the planets. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like now we all got to go study the 700,000 asteroids, but they give a flavor that is helpful, especially as you're advancing your astrological studies. It's like, oh, now that makes sense. There's a little tweak. We're fine tuning with our study of the asteroids, right? The main way that you're going to find interest is through conjunctions. And we want to use a very, very, very tight orb. We're talking like 0 degrees, 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees sometimes. So when we're talking about conjunctions, it's what's right next to each other in the same degree. Sometimes people will use 10-degree orbs for conjunctions. Sometimes we'll use 5, sometimes we'll use 3. It depends on what we're talking about. With asteroids, we're using a tight conjunction. Don't be a loose conjunction. It's not going to make sense, and it's just kind of sloppy work. So if you've got an asteroid that's right next to your sun, right next to your moon, right next to the ruler of your ascendant. So what's the ruler of everybody's ascendant? Do you guys know this answer? Most of you guys here know this answer. I have Sag rising. So the ruler of Sag is Jupiter. So if I have an asteroid right next to my Jupiter, that's really important. It's the 3rd most important thing, according to the Queen of Asteroids, right? If it's right next to your angular houses, the 1st house, the 7th house, the 10th house, the 4th house, right? Those are the biggies because it's the self and the relationship and the home and family and the place in society, the career, the ones that we all have questions about, right? So if it's conjunct any of the 4 angles, I kind of duplicated that there. So it's not really 8, it's just 7. I shouldn't have put an 8 there. But if it's conjunct any of the 4 angles, the sun, moon, or the ruler of your ascendant, your rising sign, your planetary ruler, this is what's really curious. This is the starting point. This is where you can get that secret sauce going on in your chart. So I'm going to stop the share so we can discuss. And I'm going to stop the recording so I can say thank you to everybody that came live and hello to everybody that is watching the replay. I hope that this finds you well, in good health, in good spirits. Thanks for being here. And I'm just going to stop the recording and we can discuss any questions that you guys have. There we go.